for those who don't know me, Matt Moore, class of 2008. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm from Midlothian, Virginia, just outside of Richmond. Came to Hampden-Sydney 21 years ago, I think, and graduated in '08. I was an economics and commerce major. I think that's called something slightly different now, economics and business. But I think the curriculum was largely the same. Um, I had a few internships while I was at the college. I came in thinking I wanted to be an attorney. Took econ because that seemed like great preparation for the LSAT. I think I read somewhere. I really liked my econ classes, and I interned with a lawyer who went to Hampden-Sydney, and pretty quickly realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I figured out that there was this thing called investment banking that all of the more senior students that I respected and looked up to were all seemed to be going into. So at that time, back in 2006, 2007, there was a bank that none of you will remember called Wachovia, which was acquired by Wells Fargo. And we seemed to have 5 or 6 guys every year were going down to Charlotte to work in leverage finance or M&A. And, you were hearing that they were making lots of money and learning a lot and having a great experience. To me, that just seemed like the most exciting thing to do after I graduated. So I sort of got fixated on that. I did a couple of internships. I actually won a scholarship through Wachovia, which came along with an internship. And I did another internship with Wachovia. The Wachovia pipeline blew up while I was a student because Wachovia filed for bankruptcy, and I ended up deciding to go to graduate school at UVA. I did a master's degree in commerce there, focusing on finance, and then started my career in investment banking at a middle market investment bank called Robert W. Baird, which still exists. I was in our Tampa, Florida office. I focused on mainly sell-side M&A for industrial distribution companies. So those are companies that basically buy things from manufacturers of products and then sell them on to companies that need to buy those things. It could be anything from like ball bearings to electrical connectors, building products, like whatever. Not really sexy stuff when you're a 23-year-old right out of college. Probably would have a lot more fun to cover like software companies or consumer products or something. But that was the space that I was in. I knew nothing about it before getting into it. Had a great experience in investment banking. Pretty quickly realized it actually wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. Sometimes you just don't know until you've given something a shot, which is why I think internships are just great in general. But you got to start somewhere. And for me, I kind of realized that I liked finance, I liked the markets, but didn't really like sitting behind the computer screen and just building financial models and PowerPoint decks and things like that. That wasn't what like got me out of bed in the morning. I like talking to people, and I think I was always the one of my friends on campus helping everybody else out with their resumes. And I think for me, what I realized over time, hindsight's 2020, is that I think the thrill of like getting the hard to get job was really what attracted me to investment banking. And once I got there, it just wasn't really what I wanted to do. So for the last 15 years, it'll be 15 years next month, I've worked for the same recruiting firm. It's called Search One Advisors. We're a small firm in New York City. So, some of you have been to my office actually once or twice on the fall break trip. We recruit mainly investment banking analysts, but also management consultants and some other young people to go from the sell side to the buy side. So that means venture capital, growth equity, private equity, or to work for hedge funds or long-only funds. So done that for 15 years. I lead one of our teams, and at this point, I work with anybody who's from junior analyst at a bank that's 23 years old up through like I work on director, principal, managing director level searches for various types of clients. Our focus is really on the buy side, so firms that are investing either their own capital or other investors' capital. But the place where you traditionally start, I mean, there are some ways to start on the buy side. There are some venture capital funds and growth equity firms that will hire recent college graduates to come in and like source deals for them. Basically, they're kind of these like cold calling sorts of roles. But really, where most people start, the springboard for your career would be an investment banking analyst program, or and that's what I'm going to focus on a little bit here. But I also just want to try and approach it a little more broadly, because there are a lot of different things that you can do in finance, or in just banking broadly. I mean, investment banking gets a lot of the headlines, and it is where when you graduate, if you go there, you would make the most money relative to some other things in finance. But it also is not the end all be all, and some people don't want to work 80 hours a week to make $30,000 more a year, and that's okay. But one thing that I would encourage all of you to do if you're pursuing something in finance is try to find some sort of training program. So what's good about investment banking is that you graduate college, you are in a big pool of analysts. Like, let's say you go work for Wells Fargo. Well, whether it's the investment bank or it's the sales and trading side, or even just the corporate finance side, like internal finance at a place like Wells Fargo, they're going to put you through weeks, if not months of training. You're going to be in a cohort of people. You're going to be sort of identified as a potential future leader for the firm. And so they spend a lot of time and money on developing you, and going into one of those sorts of roles as opposed to just being a random hire into a company, it is probably going to do a lot to accelerate your career. So that's just something to think about as you're navigating the landscape, applying for jobs and all of that. What years is like predominantly seniors, juniors? What are we dealing with? Like raise your hand if you're a senior. Okay, so almost everybody. Juniors, right? Okay. Any sophomores or freshmen? Okay, cool. So you're getting like a head start. That's good. The recruiting timelines for let me pull this up here. I had started putting something together on my own, and honestly, I'm stealing something from University of Michigan, because there's an investment banking club there, and they have said, by the way, that it's totally fine to. Here's their disclaimer that I can use this, but I am just going to riff off of it because it's like, why recreate the wheel if somebody's already done it? So I think just one major point to start with really is, if you are interested in anything that I'm talking about here today, like the world when I was a student back in 06, 07, and I'm fumbling my way through this, there's like one website out there that kind of lay out like, here's what this thing called investment banking is, or there was a vault guide. I don't know. I mean, it hasn't been updated in like 2 decades, I think, that gave you a primer on what's investment banking, and how do I get a job doing that. So, today there is way more information out there. It's available to everybody. I think getting a job in investment banking has become way more democratized. It really used to be you had to go to an Ivy League school, or maybe like Virginia or Michigan, these bigger schools where these firms exclusively hired out of. And then, maybe Hampden-Sydney was sending 5 guys a year somewhere because we had 2 managing directors down in Charlotte in different groups, and they were able to say, like, I want to hire guys from this school. And, they would get 5 guys each year sent to them that got prepped and everything, had the resumes worked on, and were successful in interviews because they had a lot of help. But these days it's like almost anybody could get in, but you need to be doing the right things. You need to be really well prepared, because everybody, like, no longer is there an information advantage. Everybody's got the same information that you've got access to. So you can't like stumble into an investment banking job today. I mean, maybe if your mother or father or somebody important and they're gonna like help hand you a job somewhere, but for the majority of people, you need to be really well prepared. You need to know what you're getting into, well spoken as it relates to why do I want to be in this field, so that you can be competitive with all these other candidates. So is this going into a good place? Is this? Tell me if you want me to shift gears at any point. I was excited for you, Chen, to join the faculty here because you did your PhD at Queen's, right? And I actually see a good number of candidates from a school from Queen's. We also see lots of candidates in my company who graduated from the Ivy Business School of Western Ontario or from UBC. For some reason, the Canadian business schools do a much better job of preparing, I think, students for careers in investing. I don't know why that is, but
They spend a lot of money and resource on that. Race is considered a target school, I talk about traditionally. So a lot of firms on Bay Street, Toronto hire from the crowds of few more on Wall Street. But yeah, they got a strong llama network that really work.
Yep. And yeah, like we have the Tiger Fund here, and one interesting thing that I've seen out of the Canadian schools is so many of the candidates that come our way from the Canadian schools like seem to have a lot of experience in the public markets and like have developed a real passion for it. And interestingly, we don't see that as much out of students who grew up within the U.S. You know, everybody is just talking about private equity, like that's the dream. I think that might also speak to the fact that Canada, relative to the United States, there's a much smaller ecosystem of private investment firms, and it is a much smaller economy. So maybe the access to investing is more through the public markets than private. But anyway, I was excited for you, Chen, to join the faculty because there is there's a lot of students at these schools and investment banking clubs and a lot of resources that knowledge he's going to bring to or has brought to Hampden-Sydney to be helpful to you guys that want to get into some of the harder to get better jobs within finance. Investment banks exist for a number of reasons, but at its most basic, investment banks are advising companies on various things. So that might be mergers and acquisitions. So one company, whether it's public or private, wants to buy another. They may be advising public companies or private companies on raising capital. They can also advise governments, like if the city of Richmond wants to raise money to build a new stadium, they will go to an investment bank who will issue a bond or find some other way of financing that transaction to get the money together so they can actually do it. My background is more on the mergers and acquisitions side. So I worked for a small middle market bank. Middle market meaning they are focused on deals below a certain size. That number has probably changed quite a bit since I was doing it 15 something years ago. But it might be transaction values below $1 billion or maybe even below $5 billion these days. But that's what middle market versus large cap or bulge bracket would mean. If I think John Neuter, you said, was going to be presenting at some point. So John's been at Harris Williams for, I think, the bulk of his career, and that really is the preeminent middle market investment bank. They're really well recognized as being like the go-to firm for selling your business if you're a private equity firm or you're someone who owns a mid-sized company and you want to see some sort of exit. Like maybe your kid doesn't want to take over the business and your family wants to make an exit, or maybe your kid is not capable of taking over the business. You need to sell it and diversify. And that was I worked for a firm that was competitive with Harris Williams, so we were working with a lot of private equity firms. So investment banks, like if you look at a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs, some of the bigger ones, they obviously do lots of different things. And, whether that be investment banking, wealth management, you look at JP Morgan, they've got the Chase side of it where they're managing consumer deposits. And so anything within finance, these firms are kind of doing. But if you look at the investment bank itself, there are coverage groups and product groups. So opportunities are kind of varied for what you might do. So if you join as an analyst, well, you might be placed into M&A where you're sort of competing with Harris Williams, or you may go into leverage finance where you're going to be working on the credit side of the deal. So company wants to make an acquisition. Well, they borrow a lot of money to do that. That's all facilitated usually through leverage finance or through a financial sponsors group, something like that. Equity capital markets, debt capital markets exist. They help companies go public or raise publicly traded debt. Those groups are very different than M&A or leverage finance. And then there's this big bucket of coverage groups. So again, at these big banks, there's going to be an industry group for just about every industry that's out there. So I focused on industrials or distribution, but if you look at a Goldman, there's consumer, industrials, natural resources, financial institutions, healthcare, technology, or TMT, technology, media, and telecom. And so as an analyst, you might get plugged in to work on transactions in one of those industries, and sometimes you'll work with an M&A team on a deal or a leverage finance team. At some banks, the coverage analysts do everything in-house themselves. Like every bank is structured a little bit differently. But there's a lot of different flavors. Whether you're in investment banking or in corporate banking, a lot of people do focus on a sector. I think it's great if you love software or you love consumer, but sometimes like me, you get placed in industrials and that's just the best opportunity you have. And, you just learn about industrials from that point on. So in terms of the landscape, I was talking about the bulge bracket banks. So those are a lot of the ones that you are going to see on CNBC, the larger banks that are working on typically the highest profile transactions. You've got the middle market banks, which are working on smaller to middle-sized transactions. And then there's a lot of firms that you maybe have never heard of, but are actually some of the most some of the best firms with what they do, like an Evercore, or they're not on here, but like PJT Partners, for example. There's some firms that really just focus on the M&A side of things, and do not provide all of the other services. That they're just more focused and referred to as like boutique as a result. And then you've got some firms that maybe have made their name in a specific sector. So got some here that do fintech, or Catalyst is a technology-focused bank, but there's energy-focused investment banks. Like there's lots of them down in Houston, for example, or there's even cannabis-focused investment banks. They tend to be pretty small because it's a small space, but a lot of different things you can do. These numbers are really dated on like why start in investment banking. I think for me, a large part of it was the compensation. You used to get paid. I got paid $60,000 my first year, $55,000 my first year out of school. I don't know what that is in today's dollars, but the salary started going up quite a bit because it used to be like you'd get paid, half your compensation, your base, and then half would be your bonus at the end of the year. These days, it's a lot more skewed towards the base side of it. But if you went to work for a big bank in New York, $110,000 or $120,000 is what people start at, and there's usually a bonus on top of that. So we've got people that were just out of college making $150,000, $160,000, maybe even a little bit more their first year, and it goes up from there. So you don't do everything in your career for money, but at some point money becomes important. And I think most people would want to make as much money as they can for what they're doing. But a lot of these training programs, like I was saying, you're identified as somebody, the bank or the company in general, even if you don't go into finance, just companies in general. Like if you go work for Ferguson, who sponsors the Career Center, if you go into their training program, they want to train you and have you be successful. So you have a steep learning curve in a lot of these training programs. I remember going to work for Baird, and I'm in training, and Hampden-Sydney was competitive, and I was surrounded by a lot of smart guys. But I remember going into training, just being like, wow, I feel like everybody is way smarter than I am. I think you should seek to surround yourself with the best people you can, so that you can learn as much as possible and like really be pushed. It is often very fast paced. If you're a procrastinator, great, because that's great training for being in an environment where oftentimes something comes to you that needs to be done in an hour, and you don't get more than an hour. It just has to be done somehow. And I was always great at like using my time wisely here. Sometimes I would leave things until the last minute and cram all night. That prepared me pretty well to not sleep when I was at work sometimes, and just get something. I had a memorable experience where I had to like finish some edits to a book. I had to print and bind all these books for my managing director and director to go to pitch it at some company somewhere. But I had to get it all done by like 5 a.m. and I'm in the office till 5. And I had to get in my car and I drove to the airport with these books to hand them to my director before he went through security. And so, it's that sort of stuff is memorable, and it wasn't fun at the time. It's kind of fun to look back on, but it is very much like almost like a military environment sometimes, or you're part of a team, so it just like sort of has to get done. But it can be fast paced, last minute, can be exciting, can also be like a lot of things very very boring sometimes when you're moving slides around pages and changing surplus to squares because somebody decided that they preferred those, and then the next day you change it back because a different managing director wants it another way. So sometimes it's not as fun. And then people also just do things like investment banking or consulting for the exit options. Like I was speaking to earlier, if you want to do private equity, you pretty much have to get trained in investment banking. You learn how to build financial models and value companies. You get like a boot camp sort of experience in finance, and that can take you a bunch of different avenues. So private equity is one. But what I consider subsets of private equity are others. So venture capital and growth equity, for example. Banking analysts go to work for hedge funds. Like if most of you probably know who Rob Citron is at this point. So I would assume most young people that work for, or most people in general that work for Rob Citron probably started their careers in investment banking to get trained. But people go all sorts of different places. So again, just great training in general. You'll see people go work in strategic finance roles or FP&A roles at various companies like Fortune 500s. And I think if you've gone through a banking sort of training program, probably gives you quite a bit of a leg up in terms of how companies operate. How to use Excel very, very well, because that's one of the things that you'll learn. I don't know what else I want to kind of touch on here. Maybe more of like the recruiting side of it. We're here for 2 hours, or until 2. Okay, all right, got it. So,
at the class.
Okay, got it. And I understand if anybody needs to leave at any point. I won't just think that I'm boring you. I think a big part of it is trying to figure out what you want to do, and then doing as much research as you can and preparation as you can to accomplish the goal that you've set out for yourself. So hearing me talk about investment banking, you might be like, wow, $160,000 a year, that sounds great. I don't think I'm going to mind working twice what my friends who go to work for 40-hour-week companies are going to work. All right, how do I get there? If that's not you, like I was alluding to earlier, I think there's lots of other things that you can do. in some of these training programs. But you've got to figure out what you want to do, and then like how do I actually get there? What does my resume need to look like? What are the interviews gonna be like? And some of these resources, and I'll try to, you can send an email to everybody after this with, I mean, this deck is out there. I'll write something up for you, Chen. I mean, it's all out there. I think my goal here today was to give you a little bit more background on investment banking, maybe walk you through a little bit more of the behavioral side of the interview process. How can I prepare for talking about myself? How can I prepare for answering the, like, why do I want to do this question? Those sorts of things. So a lot of this information is like kind of dated. I mean, a lot of you are seniors. I'm gonna have to say, if we're talking about investment banking and you're a senior, a lot of these jobs, like, people interned with a company last summer and they've already got a return offer and they know what they're doing. And so is Goldman Sachs going to come to Hampden-Sydney and be recruiting you seniors right now? No. Is Harris Williams at this point? Probably not, because they've probably already found their class for next year. So there are things that you can be doing to still go down that path if you want. You could look into things like what I did by going to a graduate program at Virginia, the MS Commerce program. There's a similar one at Duke. There's a similar one at Notre Dame. And these are all schools where there is a lot of on-campus presence from banks trying to hire junior people for these analyst programs. I certainly found that at UBA, where I think I probably ended up with something like 20 first-round interviews, and I had like 3 offers at different banks in what was actually a very difficult year. So I can't imagine what it's like at some of these bigger schools when the market's actually hot, which it's not incredibly hot right now, unfortunately. But that's one avenue you could look into. The other avenue, especially given it's not a super hot market, is getting into like the best finance job that you can and trying to leverage that after a year or two into something at an investment bank. Because a lot of these banks are well known for overhiring in a hot market and then overfiring people. It's always kind of feast or famine. So right now is not a great environment, but in a year it might, who knows, it might look like 2021 again, where everybody's just hiring to catch up. High GPAs are important. Having a lot of things on your resume, so internships are important. Being as well-rounded as possible, being able to talk to people. So just some things to be thinking about. So a lot of the banks, they do go to bigger schools typically, and they focus on target schools because, you know, just use UVA as an example. Well, if you go there, there's probably 300-400 students every year who are interested in investment banking. If I'm the recruiter from big bank and I come here, you know, there's 20 or 30 of you interested in investment banking. So from a numbers perspective, it just makes sense. How do we overcome that? Well, you've got people like me who can be mentors and you can network with to learn more about the industry, and develop relationships with people so that you might be able to get your foot in the door and get an interview at a place that doesn't come to campus, because, you know, I work for XYZ Bank and we've developed a relationship and I like you and I think you're going to be a good candidate, and so maybe I'm going to be willing to stick my neck out for you. That sort of stuff will go a long way. So for the sophomore back there, if you're liking what you're hearing, you need to be getting ready to interview for internships that start like not next summer, but actually like the summer after. But a lot of that work gets done now. So you kind of have to start as early as you can. In terms of actual interviews, and this I'll just be speaking more broadly, I think, to finance in general, and so maybe helpful to just everybody. A lot of your first round interviews are going to be over the phone. And it's going to be with somebody like me, who they're probably not working for a third party recruiting group like I do, but a recruiter who works for a big bank. And those interviews do tend to be a lot less focused on the technical stuff. So you're probably going to get a lot less accounting and finance. But there's lots of people who get like dinged after the first round interview because they show up and they don't know much about the company. They obviously don't know what the job is. They just don't impress the person. And I think sometimes people mistakenly don't take interviews with an HR person seriously, but you know, they do matter. Or a lot of times these days you might actually do a video interview with a computer. And I think it's on here, it says big banks use HireVue. I've admittedly never interviewed with a computer. But you know, that's something that you might encounter as well. And there might just be an algorithm, which, you know, if you say the wrong thing or you say the right thing, it kicks your resume into one pool versus the other. And so being as well prepared and polished as you could be is important. Has anybody have a job already for after they graduate? Yeah. What are you going to do?
Asset-based lending.
Okay. Where are you going?
Versus in Spain.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got a few guys there now.
Yeah. So Borns up there.
Yeah. And you're going to New York or?
Right.
Oh, okay, great. And because there's another guy that graduated last year. He's First Citizens in Houston or Dallas.
Dallas. He's my brother, actually.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
So they moved into Charlotte, but he's supposed to go to Dallas.
Okay. I met him a few months ago, actually. So I didn't get into this earlier, but I lead the New York Alumni Club. So I live in New York. Lived in New York City for 15 years, and it's been a very rewarding experience to get back to Hampden-Sydney in that way, and you know, plan a lot of events. I had a happy hour Tuesday night before I flew down here yesterday, and meet a lot of young guys who are early in their career. You and Will and your brother. We're starting to. There's actually a senior guy in the healthcare group at First Citizens.
Oh yes, that's right.
And
we forget his name, but
yeah, I haven't actually met him, but we're like. I'm very happy about that because we're starting to build a bit of a pipeline there, and it's a little bit more on the like corporate lending side of things, right?
Right.
So it seems to me like a good training program. So good luck with that. Anybody else that are back there? No. Anybody else? So a lot of us are still looking for the job. I don't know how much more of this PDF I'm gonna actually wanna go through. I did take notes on my. I've got notes on my phone here. Some things I wanted to talk to you guys about. Are there any questions so far? Is this all making sense? Is this helpful? Yeah.
Regarding the networking aspect, what's the best way to use your network without being too pushy and kind of asking for a job almost?
I think that's a great question. I hate saying that's a great question because a lot of times when I ask people questions in interviews, like they'll say 5 times over and over, "Great question." It's a pet peeve of mine. So don't do that. That's some interview advice. But that is actually a really good question to ask because I remember being your age and going like, I mean, I was probably a shyer kid and just remember going like, what do I do? Do I just email people and like ask them for help or, you know, what? I mean, you have a big resource in LinkedIn. You have resources like the Career Center. I know that Dr. Stenberg introduces students to alumni. I introduce students to alumni all the time because if you come to me and you say, hey, I want to move to Houston and I want to do this, I might know somebody in my network who does that. And if I like you and I think it would be a good conversation, you know, I might be able to introduce you. So what you don't want to do is probably the best place to start. You don't want to have the expectation that just because you went to Hampden-Sydney, you're going to walk across the stage, graduation day, and somebody's going to hand you a job. I think there are a lot of guys that think that. I would recommend, your networking is like building relationships, and maybe doing so without the expectation that somebody is going to help you. I mean, I think at its most basic level, what's the purpose? It's reaching out to somebody that you have some shared commonality with, hoping to learn about something. So I would just recommend, reaching out to guys in cities or fields that you're interested in, maybe trying to find people, ideally that have some sort of shared background. Like, not only you went to Hampden-Sydney, but, I ran cross country here and I was a resident advisor. I wasn't in a fraternity, but if somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, Matt, I'm on the cross country team. Saw that you were on the cross country team when you were a student. I'd love to learn more about investment banking or private equity or whatever. Could I borrow 10 minutes of your time at some point?" Like, for me, that's a very easy, yeah, like, let's set up a time to chat. I had a guy email me, just as another bad example, who was a student, had a really low GPA, and basically emailed me, said, like, "Hey, I'm a senior at Hampden-Sydney. Here's my resume. When can you chat?" And I was like, whoa. And he did that to multiple people. And a guy actually ended up, like, becoming a problem. We had to talk to him about it. Because that's the wrong way to do it. So, if you're in a fraternity, on a sports team, try and, like, seek guys out that are a little older to you than that, and just, ask for 10 or 15 minutes of their time. I think I would probably start younger as opposed to older. Younger guys have a little bit more time to talk to you than older guys. But, if people like you and think that you're going to reflect well on them, they'll end up introducing you to other people. So there's not really any, like, secret sauce to it. I think at a basic level, trying to learn more, announce your intentions in an email or LinkedIn note when you reach out to somebody. Why am I reaching out to you? Because I want to learn more about what you do. Hey, Matt, I'm applying for a job at Baird, and I saw that you used to work there. Would you be able to give me some tips on how to get my resume flagged, or, like, whatever? And I think we have a great alumni network, and so specific to Hampden-Sydney, most guys will be pretty receptive to talking to you and want to help you out if you're respectful and you show that you appreciate their time. Like, always send thank you notes. I think it's a lot of, like, basic stuff that you've been told to do probably your entire life. And at the end of the day, like, it's really just about building relationships with people. And coming from a small school, I think you have an outsized opportunity to do that. I mean, because we do have this brotherhood. It's a small place. You want to help people that went to the same school as you. So hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer to your question, but there's no right or wrong way. There's wrong ways, but, there's not necessarily a right way for everybody. And I think you also have to develop your own voice and be yourself. A lot of my interview advice, frankly, is to be yourself. Like, don't try and be something that you're not because you think that's what a company is looking for. Like, if you're yourself and you're a nice, respectful person, like, things are going to work out. You might not get a job at, a place that you're interested in, but you're going to find your way to a place that's probably a better fit, I think, as a result. So, be true to yourself, and I think things will work out. Should we get into? I had some thoughts on just interview tips in general, building on that last thing. I think how to tell your personal story, and yeah, does that work? Okay. How much time do you want to leave for? You said mock interviews, like.
Sleep by for change.
Okay. You want to do those, like, one-on-one? You think?
Preferably, we have all present our process to the whole.
Okay. Yeah.
So we all learn.
Did everybody come in with sort of, like, their pitch, so to speak, or, like, a little bit to say about themselves?
I have the whole assignment for the prepare today.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Well, hopefully we don't clash on what we're going to
No,
what I'm going to say.
this I'm specifically for your session.
Yeah. Um, so a big part of like a first round interview or the behavioral side of it would be just telling your story. So, if I'm in an interview, I think for me it's well, first of all, if you have my resume in front of you and you're interviewing me, I would recommend not saying, well, my name is Matt, because it's like, well, duh, we just shook hands and you have my resume. I don't need to say I'm Matt Moore. Just start with your story. So for me, it's I'm originally from Midlothian, Virginia, in the Richmond suburbs. I'm a senior at Hampden-Sydney College, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a liberal arts college just outside of Richmond. It's one of the oldest colleges in the country. It's one of only 2 remaining men's colleges. I'm a economics major, and I'm a resident advisor, and I'm on the cross-country team. And your interview will probably go from there. I mean, sometimes your interviewer will say, walk me through your resume. In that case, I'm probably going to give a little bit longer of an intro to myself. Like, well, I started my career thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. I did an internship to seek that out, and I realized that it wasn't exactly the direction I wanted to go into. And I was really enjoying my economics classes, and especially money and banking, and that led me to look into careers in finance. And so I started with an internship at Wachovia doing corporate finance down in Charlotte. I was on a team that was focused on internal real estate for Wachovia and saving the bank money on their property taxes that they paid every year, like really niche group within the bank. And then the following year, I got a scholarship from Wachovia, an internship to intern at Wachovia Securities. And that was a little bit closer to ultimately what I wanted to do, which was investment banking, but not exactly investment banking. And so I decided to go to graduate school and had the opportunity to intern with a Hampden-Sydney alumnus at his small investment bank, and went through the recruiting process while at UBA, and ended up having a couple of different offers in investment banking. And I ended up, like I told you earlier, worked and focused on industrial distribution, focusing mainly on sell side M&A, a little bit of buy side M&A. So I would just have a sort of like a little pitch like that, a quick overview of who you are, what you do, and give the interviewer enough kind of ammo to ask you questions back. Questions that you should be prepared for. I think a big one probably is, why'd you choose the college that you went to? Like, why Hampden-Sydney? And you should have an answer that's better than, it was the best school I got into. I mean, people tell me that all the time, and I'm like, that's just the worst answer that you could. It's just not thoughtful. I think you want to appear as thoughtful as possible, right? Like, companies want to hire thoughtful people that are going to do good work and not just default into whatever. And that answer for Hampden-Sydney might be, well, it was an opportunity to continue playing a sport at a collegiate level. It might be, I was really attracted to the history and the small class sizes. Everybody's their own answer for having come here. Why did you choose finance why did you choose economics and business as your major, or this as your minor? Again, have a good answer for that. I was getting at it earlier, but when you're interviewing for a specific job, you should have read the job description. You should have done research on the company so that you can tell the interviewer, why are you interested in this particular job? I mean, you'd be surprised. I get on the phone with people all the time, and I've emailed them about a job opportunity, and we've scheduled a time to speak about it, and they have no idea what the company does, what the role is. And I'm just like, it was all in the email. Like, you got an email from me. It was 3 paragraphs long. You should have at least read it before we got on the phone. It would have, saved me a lot of time, frankly. So know, like, why you're there. And I think that's also just the respectful thing to do. Other questions, like, what do you do outside of class? Have good reasons for that. A lot of you might have an interest section on your resume. Like on mine, it's at the bottom of my resume, and my interests are like golf, running, Manchester United, some other things. But each of those things that are on there, I could speak to you for days about that topic. And an example of what not to do. I had a young woman once I interviewed, and she had golf as an interest on her resume. And so I asked her about it. She said, well, I've been to the driving range once at Chelsea Piers. Full stop. Like, that's it. And I was like, is there more? Like, she can't talk about golf. So don't put something on your resume just because you think people want to see it there. Like, not everybody in investment banking or finance plays golf. So you don't have to have it there if you're not a real golfer. And again, just be yourself, develop your own voice. It's going to be different from your teammate or your brother or whoever. Like, we're all our own people. And, I think you want the company you're going to work for to hire you for who you are. You just want to be as prepared as possible. So, I'll send a bunch of questions after it. I know we're getting low on time, for the assignment you gave. Just in terms of questions that you should be prepared for. Like, I hate a lot of these interview questions, to be honest with you. Like, who's your biggest influence? And tell me about a time that you had to deal with a heavy workload under a tight deadline, or what's your biggest failure? I don't ask these questions to people because I don't think it really tells you a lot. But you need to be prepared for them, and it doesn't matter if it's an investment banking job or it's a consulting job or whatever. You're going to encounter them in a lot of interviews, like maybe you did with First Citizens. I don't know. I think it's all BS. But the point almost of asking these questions is like, do you care enough to have prepared for the interviews to have something to say? And if you've got an answer to 5 or 10 of these different questions, they're all just passed in like different variations, and you can riff on the spot and like come up with a fairly good answer for whatever the question is. And final thought, I'll shut up. I think a lot of interviewing, like, frankly, and this is where Hampden-Sydney guys, I think, can really outshine people from other schools, because you get a lot of opportunities here to be like, you can be a big fish in a small pond. It boils down to like passing the airplane test, right? Like, a lot of interviewing is, okay, you have an economics degree and a GPA high enough that we would hire you. Well, there's a lot of people look like that, but at the end of the day, like, what are a lot of companies trying to get to? It's like, if I'm going to be in the office with this person 40 hours a week, or especially if I'm going to be sitting next to them on an airplane, or a 4-hour delay at the Charlotte airport or whatever, like, do I want to sit next to this guy? Can we talk about stuff? Is this, a real person? I think a lot of your competition at some other schools for these jobs are like robots, and they don't have personalities. And, I frankly have to talk to a lot of them. It's not all about the analytics at the end of the day. And so, if you feel like that's a strength of yours, like, definitely, continue to work that muscle and be yourself and be the person that, like, I have my last thought on recruiting. I had a job offer from Jeffries coming out of UVA. I chose Baird over Jeffries, but I'm bringing up Jeffries as an example because I had a super day there, and I thought it went terrible. Like, I had one interview in particular where they just roasted me on accounting questions. I was not an accounting major. I don't like accounting all that much. I probably shouldn't have gone to investment banking, but if you don't like accounting, not a great place for you. But I remember getting roasted in an interview, and I just walked out and was like, that went terribly. Well, I got an offer from the firm, and I think what it boiled down to was I had one interview with a managing director, and the entire time, like, all we talked about was like Scotland and rugby and the fact that I had studied abroad at St. Andrews. That guy liked me, and to my point earlier, like, I had the resume they were looking for, and they were thinking that, me over the other kids that they had in that day, they'd probably rather be in an airport with, and have like something real to talk about. So, be yourselves and work on your voice. And I'm glad that you have this opportunity to, practice in front of people, and just continue to do that with friends and with your family. Cause at least the behavioral side of it, what we're talking about today, It's the easiest side of it for you to like grab your fraternity brother or your mom or your dad or sibling or something and be like, hey, can you listen to my story for 5 minutes and like just give me some feedback on it? And do that 20 times and like you're gonna ace that part of the interview. So and that's my favorite part of it is and why I am a recruiter is getting to know people. Just the part that I enjoy the most. So thanks for listening to me, and let me know if anybody has any questions. You'll get my email address. Feel free to reach out down the road if you don't already know me. But sorry, I hope that wasn't too long. That's rude.